Hey all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I am Darren, I'm your host, and today I've got another great guest, Mr. Derrick Riches of DerrickRiches.com. He's been reporting on outdoor cooking for over 20 years. We're going to talk to Derrick about the outdoor cooking technology and how it's grown over the years. I'll be right back with Derrick Riches.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Hey all, I want to take a second and talk about Inkbird's brand new instant read thermometer, the IHT1S. This thing has a lot of great high-end features at a very affordable price. It is 100% waterproof with an IP67 rating, 2 to 3 second ultra-fast response time, backlit, fully rechargeable, no batteries to replace. This thing has got all the high-end features that you would want in an instant read thermometer. Very durable. So check it out, guys. Check out the Inkbird IHT1S instant read thermometer. I think you're going to love it. It'll be your go-to instant read from now on. And now back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I am Darren. I am your host. And today I've got another great guest. I have Mr. Derrick Riches. He is of barbecue and grilling with DerrickRiches.com. He's been actually covering the grilling and smoking and barbecue field for many, many years. So welcome, Derrick. Tell us where you're from and what you do.
Well, where I'm from is actually Salt Lake City, but I live in Austin, Texas now. So the snow followed me. And I've been writing about barbecue and grilling professionally since 1997, covering every topic from, recipes and how-tos to product reviews and industry information, pretty much everything.
Now, I read your about page on your website, and the website is DerrickRiches.com, all one word. And I'll put a link in the description below so everybody can find it. But your about me section of the website kind of goes into detail on how you kind of grew up, wanting to barbecue, and your dad, I guess your neighbor gave your dad an old hibachi pot from Japan, and that's kind of started the real passion of trying to do low and slow and barbecue and trying to expand the outdoor cooking, huh?
Yeah. I mean, usually I tell the story. I tell people that my dad invented barbecue. I mean, he didn't know anything. The mountains of the West and, hunting and fishing and all that sort of stuff, but didn't know anything about Southern barbecue. And our neighbor had been a commander in the Navy, had been stationed in Japan for like a decade. And he smuggled back this big, strange looking ceramic cooker. And when he moved again, he just gave it to my dad. And, we just called it a hibachi because that's what he called it. We didn't know anything else. But it was, one of the original made in Japan Kamado grills that would become the inspiration for like Big Green Egg. And just over the course of experimenting, my dad kind of figured, one, you could just burn real wood in it, and two, you could cook at very low temperatures for long periods of time. And as I started traveling around in the early 90s and stuff, I'm like, I'm actually in Texas in the early 90s, and a friend of mine takes me to a barbecue joint, and I'm like, yeah, I've had this. I mean, sort of. So it's very familiar, and that kind of really got me interested in the barbecue traditions and different ways of cooking. And, I started, kind of got the bug at that point. And, when I got an opportunity to start writing about it, that's just kind of felt like a natural fit for me. And I just pursued it from there.
Yeah. I grew up in upstate New York, like right on Lake Ontario, and same thing. Our idea of barbecue was throwing hot dogs and hamburgers out on the grill, and maybe every once in a while some chicken. They're known for their Cornell chicken, so it's really not barbecue, right. Not low and slow. It's just grilled stuff, and that was it. Burn a couple steaks every once in a while. It wasn't until I moved to Florida back in the late 70s, early 80s, where, I ran into some real barbecue. 'Cause we
Right.
didn't even
Yeah.
have barbecue. We didn't even have barbecue restaurants up there. It was strictly,
Oh,
you
yeah.
were grilling. That's all. It wasn't really, and like I read in your about, it's the lighter fluid and charcoal, and
Yeah. That
and
was,
that was the flavor. It was the seasoning.
yeah. I mean, that's, really until it's kind of in the mid 90s when you started getting people online discussing barbecue, and you see this kind of, people up in, Oregon or Washington or something, and start getting really interested in, this whole thing. And it really globalizes at that point. The internet really spread barbecue around the world. And I was just kind of fortunate enough to be at the right time to see kind of that explosion in interest in that, worldwide. So it's
Right.
been an interesting journey.
Yeah. And even back then you had some on TV and like PBS and stuff, that's where kind of Steven Reichland, you
Yeah.
first kind of saw some of the stuff he did. And then, Julia Childs and some of the other cooks every once in a while would throw in some stuff, but nothing really like we have today. I mean, with all the cable channels that are dedicated to cooking and the internet sites, and, and that's changed over the years. And that's another thing I want to talk about because like I said before we started, the about.com is kind of where you started. You kind of landed that because you were interested in it. And I know, because I actually applied to be, one of their people to look at some of the stuff that they were doing and be one of their experts. And that was pretty much open to anybody. If you gave them a good enough story, they'd hire you. They would hire you to be their expert or their person that, would go out and answer the questions and help people out. So how did you come about that? Because that wasn't what you were trained in. You didn't, you weren't a culinary expert or anything like that. So how did you stumble into talking about barbecue?
Well, I had been doing IT work, starting about 96 or so. And like one of the first things I did was just kind of building some web pages, for some, where I worked and, doing that sort of thing. And I got kind of interested in that. So I was kind of looking for work, in that kind of direction, what web design or something along those lines. And it was actually January 97. Yeah, I'm looking for work. I'm looking for, something that I can kind of do on the side. And there was a classified ad on Yahoo, that about.com, under its first name, which was General Internet, which didn't work out very well. Was looking for people to kind of do, we need people to do some web work and people to cover some topics. And they had a list of topics and I applied for it. And I actually got accepted about 3 months before they even went live. So I was working on it, writing content and stuff, and nobody could see anything I was doing for several months because they hadn't actually turned the switch yet. And that's probably why I got the job, is because they were like just starting up. And I guess, I had to write samples and do a bunch of work like that. And they were happy, I think, with the work I did. But that's kind of how I got into that. And then, it really kind of started taking off as a big service. And, that gave me a lot of clout. And the great thing about working, in that kind of environment was they handled the advertising and the servers and all the technology and, all the back end stuff. All I had to do was create content. And so that freed me up to just focus entirely on that. It was great while it lasted.
Yeah. And back then too, it wasn't, video or anything like that. It was strictly, writing stuff up and maybe put some links in here and there to examples and all that. So it was a lot easier. And like you said, I started my little, brand, about 3 years ago. And I started out with a Facebook page and I had bulletin board type, stuff before, not on cooking, but other things, so I kind of had some kind of experience on starting little groups and all that. But once you start getting into doing YouTube videos, now you got to edit videos and produce, that kind of stuff and shoot and film stuff that a lot of people aren't really familiar with doing, and you just got to kind of learn. Even doing a podcast, you got to kind of learn how to do the software, how to edit, how to get everything up and running and doing it. And I found that it's really all not that hard anymore. They make it really simple, but it's still a lot more than what you had to do back then.
Oh yeah, I mean, now there are just so many avenues to pursue. I mean, there's a lot of great tools out there that really make it easy. I mean, I took a stab at doing video in like, '05, and it's like the cameras weren't there, and everything was
Right.
really very expensive to try and get into. And the video editing software was just kind of a nightmare to try and deal with. But now it's a lot easier. But I started out before Google existed. I mean, I've been writing
Right.
about barbecue before there was a search engine. So, but that's just kind of part of the process. You always have to be evolving. You always have to be kind of looking at how things change and all the different ways you can do things. Because in the internet, nothing sticks around forever. There's always going to be some new thing that's going to come along and kind of take over from what was there before. So you just always have to be very adaptive. But nowadays, it's kind of like where before you could write an article and that was good enough. Now it's you need full detailed photography, and you'll need video, and then you'll need kind of a marketing package from all the different social media platforms. It's like I've got to make graphics for Pinterest and graphics for Facebook and all of that sort of stuff. And plus it's like do you shoot wide, do you shoot tall, do you got to do both? Because if you're going to go to Instagram or TikTok, it's a totally different format. So, I mean, there's always a challenge involved, but you just kind of always have to be evolving.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I run into. It's easier to do some of that stuff now, but then again, now you got so many different platforms with so many different formats that now you got to, like you said, do I concentrate on just one? Do I try to have a little bit in all of them? And that's kind of what I try to do. But, there's some things like I'm not going to bother with TikTok right now because I'm still trying to get my Instagram built up more. And, I started out with one thing and I got it built up pretty good before I started venturing out. And then, I started getting spread a little too thin by trying to get into everything. And it's just me. Now, if I had somebody else, helping me and doing some other stuff, like with Susie and Todd Bullock over at Hey Grill Hey, they got like 4 people working for them now, that started out doing it themselves, but now they've got people working for them, and hopefully someday it grows big enough, I'll have some people working for me, but right now I'm having fun doing it. So
right, but then you start getting a staff, and then you start worrying about payroll and taxes, and making
takes
sure
the fun out of it.
You have to be a supervisor, and you have to do all those things. So it's I think that you can take things as far as you want to go, but it depends on where you want to focus your efforts, really, where you want to spend your time at.
So when you first started in this, barbecue's changed quite a lot since then. Even since the 90s, late 90s, it's changed a lot as far as what people think of barbecue, how people cook barbecue, all the stuff that's available and information that's available is a lot more out there. So when you first started, could you predict a lot of the stuff happening that you see out there today?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, that it would be as global as it is, that you'd have, phenomenal barbecue joints in Perth, Australia, or, that the Germans would go completely nuts over all of this, or that, there would be the kind of market for the kind of products that there is, and the diversity. I mean, when I was first starting out, it was like, every news source always had that annual gas versus charcoal article. And now it's like, well, gas, pellet, charcoal, electric, what avenue are you going to take? Because, it's gotten broader and bigger every year. And so it's, it's just such a big thing now. And mean, when I started out, it was kind of like, well, this will be just, it's a hobby. It's something to do on the side.
Right.
It's something to kind of, have fun with, and, maybe pick up a couple of bucks here and there. And, I mean, I quit my day job in 2007. So, I didn't anticipate that would happen. It was, but it's hard to predict the future that way. You never know how things are going to go.
Now, you've been around longer than Amazing Ribs and Meathead. So, I mean, and he's kind of grown over the years as well. And I've talked to him a couple times, had him on, and he's the same way. He had no idea that it would grow as big or as quick as it did, because he started out, in the beverage business,
Yeah.
and this was kind of something he started off on the side, and it grew into something where he couldn't manage it on his own anymore. And every year I look and I see the new stuff that's coming out, and the amount of people that are interested in it, and the amount of new products that are actually being sold. You walking through Home Depot and Walmart in the barbecue section, there's always something new, in there. And the technology that's being, pushed into both the outdoor and indoor cooking with the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it just opens up the whole, cooking in general to more and more people. They get more interested in it. Do you think it's going to continue in the future? What do you see coming in the future with different cookers and stuff?
Well, I mean, all of the different cookers that have come along in the last 20 years or so. I mean, one, it really brings a lot of, it becomes a lot more approachable. It really gets people into things. I mean, when I started out, it was the Weber Smoky Mountain that was kind of like, the smoker to have. It was the, people, there were huge forums and huge discussions. It's, this little thing that you can barely put a brisket into is, is the great smoker of its time. And, the explosion in pellet grills has just been phenomenal. And I think that, I mean, part of me says it's like, well, I mean, kind of what else can you do? But, I guess, I didn't see really, a company like Traeger getting big enough to start taking on Weber, or, to that kind of volume. But, it makes sense when you look at it in hindsight. So I think that it becomes so mainstream, and, it's become regular. It's like, you're saying, it's like, back 30 years ago, for most people, a barbecue or a cookout was burgers and hot dogs. And, now so many people have, a fully operating smoker in their backyard, and, their cookouts are ribs and brisket and pulled pork. And, it's much more investment in time and energy, but at the same time, it's so easy to do. I mean, so much of this has just made it so that, pretty much anybody can pull this off, pretty reasonably well. I mean, the first time I went to a barbecue competition was like 2002. And, most of the smokers were custom made, and that was actually a big part of going to a competition, was to go around and look at everybody's, smokers, because, they made them out of whatever they could, was cool. I mean, I remember one guy had, in essence, a smoker made out of a small Cessna, a Volkswagen turned into a smoker, or, it was just kind of crazy, the sort of things people would do. But, that kind of also limited who could get into it, because if you wanted a large scale smoker, they just really weren't around, or they cost a lot of money. And, you could literally buy $1,000 smoker that's, big enough today to let you cater events. So,
right.
Yeah, it's just amazing how many people now know, traditional barbecue and have an opinion on it, right or wrong.
And, and with all the competition out there, I mean, there's demand because there's more grill companies making more grills, different grills. I mean, Big Green Egg was the only Kamado grill around for the longest time. And now you've got, Primo, Kamado Joe, you got Vision, you got so many others. You got all the ones on, Alibaba that you could stick your own name on.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's so much, different competitors in the same type of grills, but then there's other ones that innovate as well. Like with, Masterbuilt now, they used to be just, the electric type smoker, but now they've got their charcoal, gravity fed that, that they put out in the market for, ungodly, stupid, cheap money that people are out there buying up now. And 5 years ago, that was unheard of to have something like that out there. So I think with all the competition, drives all the different, not just the, competition, or not just getting the same type of smokers, but also trying to figure out what the next thing's going to be. You see that with all the, flat top griddles out there, with the Blackstones and the and the Camp Chefs and all that, trying, and then they add stuff to that. Like they got the deep fryer connector, to it, and a warming drawer.
Yeah.
So it's just constantly trying to make things better and more of it.
Well, there's kind of always been the companies. It's like every time they see something working, they just pounce on it. And then they start adding every possible accessory they can think onto it. Some of these grills kind of get a kind of Swiss Army knife sort of scenario going on. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I remember Coleman came out with a line of gas grills that also had a deep fryer side table, which turned out to be like death hazard. But, they tried, it didn't work terribly well. They disappeared. But, I mean, and I think part of because it's like, we associate outdoor cooking with just, fun and enjoyment. And so there's an endless supply of people that just, I can do something better, or I want to invent something, or, they take their creative energy and, turn it into, the smallest accessories or the biggest grills, whatever. I mean, it's kind of encouraging in a way, I guess, to see just the extremes of creativity that people will go to try and come up with something different or something new. And that's kind of one of the things that's really fun about the industry is, every year I'm kind of surprised by, wow, somebody thought of that. That's probably won't work out, but it's at least it's inventive. It's interesting.
Now, you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier about, Traeger taking on Weber. Now Weber is trying to take on Traeger with their, smoke fire pellet grills. And that was, a long time in the making. They didn't, they thought they had done all their R&D on it. They had a little bit of a, snafu when they had released it. There was a lot of negative press that came out and some issues, and, some people were trying to cover it up, but they kind of acknowledged eventually that they had some issues with the design, but still, it's, a company that traditionally was, charcoal, smokers and, kettle grills. And now they incorporate a pellet grill, which they have to be a technology company because they're using Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and app function. What do you think about, companies like that try to change what they are to fit what's going on in the industry?
Well, I mean, both Traeger and Weber have said recently that they are technology companies. And I kind of take issue with that because to me, it's like, how far can you deviate from your core product and change your thinking and your mindset and still kind of be there for, your consumers? But I don't know. I think that's kind of a fight that doesn't really end up having much of a winner to it. Of course, Weber was going to come out with a pellet grill. They had to, it just became too big of a market. Yeah, obviously they rushed it to market and it wasn't ready for prime time quite yet. And they've had to backpedal a lot. But, it was just too big, to pass up on. And Traeger's kind of pushing the same sort of thing, and they're trying to fight out that, they own everything. But the thing of it is it's like, I remember when Traeger was, just Traeger. They were the only pellet grill makers. They were, and they never really kind of got out of their own small time thinking, for 30 years, because they just figured they were kind of the only name in the game. And once their patent ran out and everyone jumped onto it, that really kind of sent shockwaves through the whole industry. But most people, even, a decade ago, never would have assumed that pellet grills would be the kind of scale that they are today. And I still kind of think it's, it still could be almost anyone's game in that regard. Because despite all the technology and, all the big push for that, most people fall back to reliability. It's like, well, I had one of those and I just didn't like it. And, or they were just trying to make it too fancy, and simplicity can really win out, in this sort of business, because, it's not, we're not actually, this isn't rocket science. It's not an actual technology game. It's backyard cooking. And, you can do it on almost anything. It doesn't take that much thought and effort to design a good grill that works very well for people. But, I don't know. You got to put a lot of bells and whistles on things to attract certain customers, I guess.
Yeah. And I think, like you're saying, and you're kind of hinting at, sometimes some of these companies, they let quality go instead of, by putting some of this other stuff in. I know that one of my big complaints with the Masterbuilt, gravity fed, and I had John McLemore on.
Yeah.
And he even said that, he had his guys that designed it. He had a price point that Walmart and all those people that sell it, had to be at. So it wasn't make me the best smoker.
Yeah.
It was, if you can make it $500, see what you can do with it. And, that's what happens is that thing could, for a couple, if they put a little bit more money into it, and it wouldn't take a whole lot more. If you make it at $900, it would be a really good, quality product. But unfortunately, they make it so cheap that, the Bluetooth goes out, or the this goes out, or this burns out because they use cheaper materials.
Yeah,
and
you melt through the bottom of it, or and that is, in my time doing this, that's actually been one of the biggest frustrations. I mean, when I first started, writing about grills and smokers and stuff, Charbroil still made all their products in the United States. There weren't very many imports, but the big box stores, they don't see grills as a product they carry as a destination item. People are picking them up because they're here in the store, because they're used to shopping here. So we want to hit a really low price point so we can, get them out the door. And that really just starts cutting into so many of these products, because particularly since most of it's gone to overseas, it's not just, can we hit the price point, but we also have to actually keep the weight down for the shipping costs and for the warehousing costs.
Right.
And that's been hard to deal with. Some companies, they'll kind of try and split it. They'll try and do kind of the big box side versus, a better brand, maybe something more specialty retailer. I mean, Traeger kind of has that. Timberline grills weigh a lot more and are built better than what they sell at, like a Home Depot. Their $800 basic, what is it, the Pro 22. There's a lot more construction into it because they know they're selling it to kind of a higher market space. Some companies just kind of get into, we're just going to go for a big box. That's going to be our direction, and we will go by what they tell us we're going to be able to sell the product for. That's kind of what was killing Masterbuilt before they got taken over. Not that, they're necessarily not still playing that game, but at least now they're being very innovative about what they're developing. If they can get the execution down a little bit better, I think they could make a product that, has a better track record. I mean, I'd love to see one of their gravity feed charcoal units at $1,500 with a, good solid cooking chamber and a lot better construction so that it would work better. Because I think there's a space for that in the market. People loved the idea, but a lot of people kind of felt they got gypped a bit because it didn't work the way they thought it was going to be. And, that's kind of what happened to Weber Smokefire. Is a lot of people bought it and it's like, well, it keeps not working right. I mean, and it's kind of weird that we live in a time where the companies that are producing products like, oh, we'll catch that in the next software upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay.
A firmware upgrade. Well, how can you do that? Grease fires are not a firmware update outside.
Changing the firmware is not going to alter the pellets flowing into the hopper, but
right.
You do your thing, I guess. But I guess
that's a catch-all. It's a catch-all on what we're going to be able to do to fix it. And
I guess if you think you're a technology company, then you start thinking you're like Apple or Microsoft or something like that, and we can fix this on a software side. It doesn't always work that way, but.
Hey, all, I want to introduce you to a company I just started working with, Fresh Jack's Organic Spices out of Jacksonville, Florida. They're a small, family-run company that's fast-growing. I've tried a bunch of their different seasoning blends and spices, and I can tell you they're all fresh, all organic. None of them contain artificial flavors or sweeteners. None of them have anti-caking agents or preservatives. They all taste like they were just made for you yesterday. Check them out, guys. They're on Amazon in the link below. They have different sample packs, different blends. Like I said, they also have the individual seasonings and spices as well. Fresh Jack's Organic Spices. Check them out, guys. I love them. So I'm going to pull up your website here because I want to show people what we're talking about. So this is your website here, Barbecue and Grilling with Derrick Riches. And it's DerrickRiches.com, but that's what your name. It's Barbecue and Grilling with Derrick Riches. So you got a lot of stuff on here from all the years that you've been covering outdoor cooking. So, and you do a lot of reviews for grills. So how do you look at grills since you've been doing this for so long and some of the ins and outs and where people are buying these? Most of the grills in Home Depot, Walmart or anymore are those grills that came from Alibaba, charbroiler and or charbroil and char griller and all that. A lot of that stuff is just, thrown together and put up there really, really cheap. So how do you go about when you go and you test a grill or you do a grill review? What do you look at?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is kind of an experience issue. I look at who's making it. I look at where it's coming from. I think, it's there's a lot of reputation bits to it. I know a lot of the companies personally. I've been through hundreds of factories. I've been all over the place. And then I get down with a grill and I basically try to ruin it as quickly as I can. But, I look at, my perspective is this. If I look at what, the consumer is going to get out of it, I want to recommend something that you're going to be able to make it work. It's not going to be overly complicated and you're going to be able to rely on it. Reliability is a big thing and durability is a big thing. There are so many grills these days that, particularly in like the gas grill range and stuff like that, they may only last 2-3 years at the best, depending upon where you live. I mean, if you were in Tampa, Florida, things rust fast.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Versus, Las Vegas or something like that. But I'm trying to think of like what's the first reaction of consumer? What I try to avoid is recommending something that someone's not going to have a good first experience with, because I think that that's very important. And it's also, with recipes or with cooking techniques or anything like that, I want somebody who's new to be able to go out, buy something that they can count on, that's going to work out of the box, that they're not going to have issues with, and they're going to have a good first experience with. Because if you have that good first experience, you're going to come back. You're going to go back to it, and you're going to try other things, and you're going to explore, and you're going to do more things. It's bad, in my opinion, to the industry that there's a lot of really bad products out there that don't work right, and that people just get frustrated with and go, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't enjoy it. Because it is something we do for enjoyment. I mean, honestly, how often do you fire up a grill or a smoker because, oh, it's Tuesday and I've got to make dinner? You're doing it because it's fun, and it should be enjoyable. You should get something out of it, and it should be about the process of cooking and that sort of experience. And so that's kind of, my first reference in reviewing products is it going to fulfill that need? Is it going to work for that? And then it's a matter of, where's it sourced from? Who's actually manufacturing it? What's their reputation like? What's their customer service like? What do the feedback from my readers over all these years have to say about these sort of things? And, what kind of people work there? What kind of people are in these businesses? I mean, there are companies, it's like everyone who works there has been there for less than 2 years, but the company's 20 years old. And then there's people, it's like the company's 30 years old. And not only are people working there that have been there for 30 years, their kids are now working there. It's like, okay, that to me is impressive, because you're thinking long-term. So, that's a big factor of it. And then you get into the mechanics of, does it heat properly? Is the airflow right? Are the cooking grates going to hold together? All the technical factors that'll go along with it. And then I just kind of put all of this information into my giant monster 25-year-old database of stuff and start pulling out what I think works best.
Well, that's one of the benefits of you doing this for so long, that you know what to look for. Some of these manufacturers, where it's being sourced from, the materials that they use. Yeah. And like you were saying, I'm guilty of being one of those people that would go, this was, years ago, I'd buy a gas grill at the Home Depot or what have you. And then a year and a half later, I'm having to switch out the elements because they rotted out, and they charged me another $50.
Yeah.
For the stuff that's made, it just rots out. And, you get sick of that after a while, and you go, it's just not worth it, because it makes it not fun. It makes it to where you dread, I haven't used my grill in a month and a half. I'm going to go out there and it's going to be rotted out. Am I going to have to get a new one? And right. I've done that with several different things. And it's because they make them really cheap. They make them that way so that you have to go back and buy something else or something new and all that. So
yeah, there is a disposability factor. It's kind of been in the industry for quite a while. And it is driven by, major retailers who they want to be able to put on their floor a grill that costs $500. That's both gas and charcoal, or hell, now gas and pellet, with a side burner and a rotisserie system and lights, and now Wi-Fi functionality. I'm going to do it for $500. I'm like, wow, that's impressive that you can do that. What are you making it out of? Foil?
Right. Well, and then it comes back to where now I've got to buy these other parts and stuff that, to fix it and all that. So, yeah, I mean, and literally the outdoor cooking area in Walmarts and all those, Target, have expanded so much in the last few years because of all they're figuring out. We can sell the charcoal, the wood, the all the utensils that are specialty utensils. Well, you got to have this big spatula that you can use for making smash burgers and all that. I mean, they didn't used to have that. They'd have maybe two little things and a couple bags of charcoal, and then 7 or 8 different types of grills, and that was it.
Yeah.
And now there's so many different things that they, I mean, people are buying these flat top grills, like I said before. Walmart's got a whole big Blackstone section with 6 different types of flat top grills now, and
Oh,
all
yeah.
the accessories to go with it. You got to
Right.
have the little squirt bottle that says Blackstone on it, and not the one you can buy at the dollar store.
Well, I mean, accessories is a huge market, and it's just exploded. You used to buy a basic barbecue tool kit, and it had a spatula and a fork and some tongs. And now there's this huge. I mean, Weber employs more designers in the accessory division than they do in the grill division.
And that's something that says something too, because now that they're into the pellet grills, they
Right.
it's totally different beast.
Yeah, and they will continue to come out with all sorts of accessories. And I usually tell people, it's like, if you need tools and accessories for your grill, go to a restaurant supply store. They're really cheap there.
Oh yeah.
It'll save you so much money, and they usually work better because it's like the tongs that they sell. I have some right here somewhere. As a grill tool, if you have to actually flip a lot of stuff with it, your hand gets tired because they're that stiff steel spring. But if you go to just get the clamshell tongs at the supply store that cost you $3, they're lightweight and easy to use, and they actually last really well. And you throw them in your dishwasher and you're good to go.
Right.
I usually discourage a lot of accessories, just because it is a gimmick. And this whole notion that you have to have branded everything. I'm not of that that ilk.
There's plenty of brand people out there, that's for sure. I mean, you have that with everything, with cars and sporting equipment. I mean, but it's big on the grills too. You got, Big Green Egg makes a great product. I'm not going to trash any products, but you got people that they'll only, buy Big Green Egg stuff, and they'll buy every Big Green Egg accessory that's out there. And they'll buy the barbecue guru that says Big Green Egg on it, but they won't buy the one that doesn't, for $20 cheaper or whatever.
Yeah. When I was probably 1999, I met, there was this woman who was literally the only person that specialized in marketing for outdoor cooking. And she told me, says, because I was working on writing reviews and doing sort of stuff like this. And she says, there's three grills you don't criticize, be careful around, because their fan base will attack you,
roast you.
And that was Traeger, and this was early days Traeger, Holland Grill, and Big Green Egg. And you don't mess with the fan base because they are religiously fanatical about it. And you can say what you will about Big Green Egg, they actually invented the idea of having a grill festival for their grill. And that was the fan base. That wasn't the company. People who bought the grills started Eggtoberfest and would get together with all of their eggs, cart them to, a big park. And now they actually have it at the Atlanta Speedway, and cook all day long and just give food to people and trade recipes and techniques and stuff like that. I mean, man, can you imagine that kind of consumer base? It's incredible.
Yeah. And they still have them today. We had a local one here just last week.
They're all over the place.
For the whole, Tri-County area where I live here in the Tampa area. I mean, and people do. The Big Green Egg dealers sponsor them, and they give discounts. And so, I mean, and there's always a ton of people there, coming that have never, thought of buying one, and they'll walk out, hey, come back tomorrow when this is all done, and you can buy this used one for a couple $100.
Yeah, I know. It's insane. I mean, I've been a couple times to the big event in Atlanta, and the line of trucks that when they start selling off the eggs that, they brought out for people to use is insane. I mean, it just half a mile of pickup trucks coming to load up a Big Green Egg to cart it home because they got it for $100 off. Wow. That's impressive, but there's kind of a downside to that. It's, in a way, it's people become so militant about what they're using I've seen people, it's like, oh, I have a Traeger, you have a Pit Boss, I'm better than you are. It's like,
Right.
Actually, did you know they're actually made in the same factory?
Right.
They're made in the same factory. They're just branded differently, and it's a contract job. Um, Being on Team Traeger or Team whatever to me it gets a little ridiculous, because then you start buying $500 jackets, and it's like, well, I guess if you've got that kind of money, fine. I don't, but
or you should say, I can't eat anything that's not cooked on a Big Green Egg.
It's like, no. Yeah, because if you can tell me which pellet grill cooked your your whatever, that chicken, I will be impressed
Yeah. That's like trying to differentiate the different kinds of pellets it was cooked with, or charcoal. It's
yeah. I mean, people who say they can, but I've never seen it proven.
Yeah. People will say anything. It's like a fine wine. I can tell what charcoal you use.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. So
I don't really believe that about wine either. But when it comes to people who can tell me where the wood pellets were sourced, I'm like, okay. But again, that kind of goes back to the point that this is a fun thing to do, and that means that you can be a fan, and you can be involved in the community, and you can be on all the Facebook groups, and you can be out there posting your pictures of everything you've cooked, and for a lot of people that's great. They love it. It's exciting, and it kind of fuels the industry in a way. So
yeah, and it's just like anything. You're going to have people that are brand centered. You're going to have people that just love to cook. You're going to have people that, like me, I love to cook, and I cook on I got 7 different grills out on my patio because I love to do it. Like, yeah. And I'm sure you got more than just one grill sitting out on your patio. And it's just something where, I use this one for this, I use this one for that. And I try to experiment with this one to see where it's fun. I got a PK, I got a Hasty Bake, I got Kamado Joe, I've got, Traeger, they're all fun to use, and I use them for different things sometimes. So it's, to me, it's just fun to play around with stuff and cook things on it and see what else I can do, expand my repertoire. That's what I love about it. Not just, I've got this grill and it's the best in the world, and I'm just going to sit here and pet my grill.
Yeah. Well, but actually that's kind of, one of the other weird things about the time we live in, because I watched I have a grill, but now I also need a smoker, and that made perfect sense. They do different things, but then I have this kind of grill, and then I have this kind of grill, and I have this kind of grill, and now we have that whole thing. And it's one of the things that really sells the flat tops is this reverse sear thing. I put my steaks on my pellet grill, and I cook them low and slow for an hour, and then I fire up my flat top to get that sear on there. And it's like, well, okay, cool. That works really well. I've done it many times myself. But the multiple grill household is, that's also, fed the growth so much over the years.
Oh, the full blown outdoor kitchens. People have, I haven't had a gas grill in a while because I fell out of love with gas grills. Like I said, they get falling apart, and I really, they don't add a whole lot of flavor, but they're starting to come, they're coming around too. There's some new ones that are coming out that, have the Wi-Fi, and you can actually dial the temperature in and all that, like you can now on some of the pellet grills and the smoker controllers and, the blowers and stuff out there. There's some things that are coming out that just makes it a little bit more interesting and intriguing to me, but and they're starting to make some that will last a long time as well. So, well,
there's always been very good gas grills that will last a very, very long period of time, but nobody tends to buy them, and they're only sold in very small distribution channels. So, Modern Home Products, Broil Master, and Pacific Gas, and some of these companies that have lineages that go back to the first days of gas grills. When they were built, they literally had to last forever because the gas companies gave them away. Some of those are still around. And I try to tell people, it's like, well, if you're tired of replacing your gas grill, buy one of these. It'll last you for 20 years. But it became such a throwaway item in the last 20 years that people just don't see it that way. And I think it's part of the reason that gas grills have taken it kind of on the chin. But you're right. It's not like it adds a whole lot of flavor to what you're doing. It was always a convenience factor. It was always the simplicity of it. And now pellet grills are literally as simple. So why have gas?
So what's your favorite, just off the top of your head, what do you have on your patio that's your favorite thing to go out and cook on?
In all honesty, the thing that's consistently held with me over the years has been my Weber kettle, because it's so simple and yet so versatile. I mean, I can do all sorts of stuff with it. And it's, to sit there and say that of a grill that you can get for $90, I think is phenomenal. And I still say, it's like, if you want a good grill that you can, and really want to explore cooking, get one of these. I mean, I love my egg. Like I said, I've had one for 20 years. And I recently actually upgraded to the XL. So I have a really big green egg now. So, and that's great. That's my go-to pizza cooker and, all that sort of stuff, because, I can get that thing at 800 degrees and hold it steady and, do all those things with it. But, after all these years, for me, simplicity is a big deal. And so, and I have an open grill, which was made for me, which is just, it's just an open grill with a adjustable grate. It's an old style, I used to call them the Santa Maria styles or stuff like that. The coal grate goes up and down to adjust the heat, and it's just open. There's no lid. There's no nothing. It's just straightforward cooking. And I love cooking on that, because it is just, it's literally like the street grill. It's
right. That's kind of what I use my PK for. I have a PK out there when I want to grill some steaks or grill up some chicken. I can get that thing up and going really quick, and the fire's really close to the grate, and I can just toss something on there really quick and get it going and have it done. So,
and I do love the PK grill. I always have, and I'm really glad that product got saved.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's some really great grills. Like, I recently got a Hasty Bake, and that thing, for being as old as it is, the design, they've tweaked it over the years, but it's still, you got some grills now that are finally starting to catch on that, hey, I can make the charcoal bed go up and down, and it makes it a better smoker in this. So you got some other companies now that are starting to figure that out, and they're incorporating that. Even some custom ones like Lone Star Grills out of Texas there, they're starting to make some grills like that as well. So, so some of those designs that have been around forever, people are starting to figure out, they were a regional type grill forever, and they're still close to that Oklahoma area. But, people are starting to discover them. We go, hey, these are pretty decent cookers.
But, I've always loved Hasty Bake, and the people there are great. It still has its roots. Yeah. Which I love to see. So many companies have been bought out or taken over, or just completely changed
corporate.
These private equity firms buying up all of our great grill making companies. It's just sad, but I love those companies that still have their lineage, that can still say, Grandpa invented this. I love I love those, and I think that the people who who brought PK back still kind of believe that, they're still trying to continue that tradition.
Sure.
But Hasty Bake is one of those, they just go back, so far. And, it's not what you would call modern looking, but
no,
it really, really does extraordinarily well.
Right. Exactly. So you, before we finish up here, we haven't really talked about, you've been doing this for a long time now. Have you ever competed in barbecue competitions or anything like that? When you watched all of the shows start coming out on the cable channels, how did you react to that? What did you think about all that? Did you get more popular? Did your, people follow you? More people start following you because of that, or?
Oh, I don't think that any of that kind of directly benefited me. I was before Barbecue Pitmasters ever came online, I was doing 5 million readers a month. But I I've been to tons of competitions. I know tons of competitors. I've occasionally lent a hand, but I don't have kind of the desire to compete. I think one, I recognize that if I was going to do it, I'd really have to go in all the way. And that's a time obligation on my part that I don't know that I'm willing to make. I also like sleeping. Sleeping is important for me. And if I was competing, I know I wouldn't, because I would be too amped up and not be able to relax and enjoy the experience. One of the things I love about going to competitions is just hanging out at the competitions and, being able to kind of sneak in. I've always known enough people that I can kind of sneak back and take some samples and, enjoy that end of it. So I'd much rather do that than compete. That just looks like too much work.
Yeah. I talked to Meathead about that once, and he said he just have a big target on his back. There's no reason. He's got nothing to prove and, a lot to lose if, well, because they're so subjective, you can, the way, especially now, I talk to, like Malcolm Reed and some of it's just so hit or miss anymore. And a lot of the competitors are using a lot of the same stuff, and they're all trying to hit those same flavor profiles and stuff like that now, that it's very hard to Myron Mixon doesn't win every competition he goes to anymore.
No.
So.
Well, actually, I met up with Myron once at a competition in South Carolina a long, long time ago. It was the South Carolina State Championship. There's ribs, pork, and chicken, and it was right before the Royal, and so he did the pork and the chicken South Carolina style, and I love that style. I just the tanginess and the vinegar of it. And then he did his ribs Kansas City style because he won another practice run before the Royal. So he won first place in those two categories and last in the ribs. But, he threw away the competition. He wasn't there to win. But Myron's an interesting character. He's a strange person. I've had long conversations with him, and every time I meet him, it's the first time for him.
Right.
But, I remember in the 90s that people complained about barbecue competitions being arbitrary and the judges don't know what they're doing and it's a crapshoot and, it just depends on what table you land on. That's always been a complaint. That's always been there. But I do kind of have a problem with the fact that so many people coming out of barbecue forums or, discussion groups or something like that, thinking, this is the rub I have to have. This is the sauce I have to have. This is the injection I have to have. And I need to go stock up and buy all these things. And it's like, it's a cooking competition. Shouldn't you make that yourself?
Right.
People used to, and, they used to do all that themselves. But yeah, that is kind of another thing of it, because my position with cooking barbecue is trying different things, not trying to do the same thing every time.
Right.
And that's also another reason why, if I did compete, I probably would screw it up, because I'd be like, what would be interesting here? Orange sounds good today. Yeah. That sort of thing. And, you're just going to ruin your turn-in box because you've gone for a strange flavor. But I also I don't know. There's kind of a purist in me that says, I'd want to make everything myself and not go for the exact profile that everyone else does. That's ultimately the thing about barbecue competitions. There's not a creativity score.
Right.
It's a narrowing thing. It's like, how close can you get to what most people are going to think is the perfect flavor for barbecue? And I respect that and I understand that. But I also kind of have an issue with the fact that so much of it is now Kansas City style, not necessarily other styles. You've got Florida Barbecue Association down there. You've got the Carolina people. I don't know how many groups we have in Texas today, because it's probably changed today. But so much of competition barbecue is, centered around a single flavor profile. And for me, I kind of lose interest a bit in a way.
Yeah.
So that. But I mean, I love the competitions. I love hanging out there.
Yeah, I think they're fun, and I think that they're a different animal. That's for sure. Everybody that I've had on my podcast that's been a competitor, or even the famous ones, go, barbecue competitions are more, to have fun, and what you're cooking for a competition is not what you're eating at home or what you're cooking at home.
Oh, exactly.
So it's a lot different. Even they know it. They're cooking for that one bite, and they don't want to eat a whole rack of Johnny Triggs ribs with all the things stuffing on it. Now, what about the steak cook-offs? Have you ever looked at those? Have you been to those and see how they've changed?
Yeah,
over the years?
I've been to a few. It's been really interesting how popular they've become. I mean, it makes sense. It's quick, because, you certainly don't have the time commitment of a barbecue competition, and they're fun to watch. But yeah, again, that's kind of I think I don't know. I might try one sometime just for the fun of it. I would love to be able to go to one anonymously. That way there'd be no ramifications when I did horrible at it. But
just change your name to Rick Derrick or something.
Yeah, just go with an assumed name, and
and one of the things I've seen of those, I follow some of those Facebook groups with a lot of the guys, and I've had the SCA guys on and talked about it, and even some with Malcolm, he does those too. He finds them fun, but they started, it seems, over the last couple of years, the more popular they got, they've gotten down to, everything's got to be round. All the steaks got to be, round, and they got to have the grill marks just a certain way. And it gets more of everybody's stuff looks the same, and the flavor, just getting to where barbecue is, the flavor profiles are the same. And it's like a crapshoot, you flip a coin, which one's which, because they all look the same. They all have the same grill marks. They all taste the same. So,
I think it's, because you have to have the PK grill.
Yeah.
And you have to have, Brad's grill grates.
Yeah.
Brad has done really, really well with that. Brad's an old friend. So, and that's just the thing. It's like, oh, well, we had a competition and this person won. Do you know what rub they used? It's like, you'll see that on Facebook and stuff,
right.
Who won? What rubs were they using? What did they use? And because everyone wants to imitate it. And I would love to see someone do a state competition with a creativity score.
Yeah,
just for the fun of it, just to see where that goes. I think that would be interesting. But you're right. The more interest there gets, the more kind of cutthroat the competition becomes, and the more the stakes go up.
Yeah, and more the box gets smaller and what they're looking for, and the judges, it's not, doesn't expand more. Okay, well, this one won, and it's totally different than that one. It's it starts to shrink. Okay, now it's everybody's got to make it smaller, and it's the creativity part gets kind of sucked out of it.
Well, I think about it. It's like, chili competitions used to be huge. I mean, that was, there would be, state chili cook-offs, and there'd be the national chili cook-offs, and, Texas there was a chili cook-off every weekend. And they kind of died out when it became a competition to see who could make the spiciest chili.
Right.
Because right. When they're carting
no flavor,
right.
The guy's falling down going, I can't breathe.
They're carting the judges out on stretchers because it's just gotten preposterous. And that kind of killed it.
Yeah.
A bit. So, and I'm not saying the competition barbecue is going to die. But I think that a little more variety would be interesting. I mean, Sterling Ball used to do the smoke. What was that in California? That was a no technology cook-off. It was charcoal, no pellet grills, no controllers, nothing like that. And, I'd love to see some more things like that, some variation.
No injections, no, maybe 3 different ingredients and that's it.
You can only come in with raw ingredients. Right. You're going to make everything yourself, just to have some of those sort of things. Because I think that, let's keep it interesting.
Right.
Let's have some variety in the roles a little bit, maybe. And I know that there's a million competitors who are going to listen to this and go, "Oh, you're so wrong." But,
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually have these conversations with people who have won multiple world championships, and they kind of agree with me on some of this. It's like it's too regimented. I mean, Chris Marks is a old friend of mine. We've known him for years, and I'm actually helped him out of the Royal when he was just playing around because he stopped trying to win a long time ago. But he has 9 world championships, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't. This is where I lost interest was when everyone started using the exact same ingredients."
Right.
And I gotta kind of agree with that a bit.
I think the love, the excitement and the love gets lost when you start doing that, and you're
Yeah.
playing to hit a certain profile, and you're not really exploring, how I can make something taste better. It's more of I want to make it exactly like
Yeah.
Myron did, or whoever. It's just
Yeah. And the
so I
idea
want to
there's
make
a
Johnny Triggs ribs because I know they win. It's
yeah, I know, but I've seen people try to do Johnny Triggs rigs, and Johnny Triggs still, his ribs, and Johnny still wins. So, you know, you can make that argument also, and people say it's very arbitrary. It's like, why does Chris Lilly keep winning Memphis and May? Or Tuffy. One of those two is going to tend to win it. But, okay, not always, but they consistently can. And it's, but that's, I argue it's experience. Those guys are so good because they've done it so many times. Nobody's probably cooked more pork shoulders than Chris Lilly. Just
so. One last question I got, because you talked about, hit on this just a little bit, talking about competitions. What's your favorite style of barbecue? Because there's all different kinds out there. You got North Carolina, South Carolina, Memphis, Kansas City, Texas. You're in Texas now, so
yeah, I am in Texas. I I love Central Texas barbecue. I love Central Texas brisket, particularly when it's traditional. Open pit, salt and pepper, and it's just the meat. I love that. I do really love South Carolina pulled pork. It just that I will go out of my way for that. And
now
if it's
the yellow mustard
really good,
kind, or because you got different kinds in each, even South Carolina.
I know. Well, it actually that is dependent on how I feel that day. I love a good mustard sauce. I love a good Piedmont. Sometimes I want it spicy, and sometimes I want it a little sweet. But I love the tanginess of it, and but that's what I love about barbecue. Is because
there's so many different kinds of
there's so much variation. And that's I love finding new things. I love finding someone who's done something different, or they're drawing from a tradition that you don't get into as much. That's kind of where my passion for it is, and that's what I want to see preserved is the diversity of it, not that one competition winning style.
Exactly. And I think that's what people really, if they look at it and they go, okay, hey, a lot of people don't know that in Western Kentucky, mutton is a big barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
It's like all over. They have festivals of it up there, and then you go to Eastern North Carolina and Western North Carolina. It's two different kinds of sauces and and where you're cooking. So I mean, it's whole hog is over here, and then over here it's ribs, and then Tennessee is totally different. Alabama, it's all chopped, and so I mean, it's just every region has their own kind, and to me, that's what makes it fun and what makes it great. You can eat 2 weeks, straight, had different barbecue every night.
You could, you really could. And that would be a great 2 weeks. And that's, that's why I tell people, get out, travel, go places. If you've got the opportunity to just find some out of the way place that is in a region you're not familiar with, go give it a try. Because that's what we should be doing. We should be, barbecue is the American culinary tradition. I mean, it's distinctly American in every possible way.
Everywhere you go.
And it changes. It can change within 5 miles, depending upon where you are. And that's what we should be preserving. That's what I mean, that's one of my big passions is preserving the diversity of it.
And even with all this technology and changes that we have that make it easier for us at home to do it, it still boils down to that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Derrick, I want to
Oh.
thank you for being on. And you go ahead. You finish up what you were saying. Get your thought.
I don't know. I lost it at this point.
Just the diversity is really what I look at it. And that's in being able to create something new and go, hey, tonight I want Eastern North Carolina. I want the vinegar based with red pepper sauce, and tomorrow I might want the Memphis style ribs, or Kansas City burnt ends or something. So it's definitely something that you can have something different all the time.
And that's what we should promote, so people know that there is that diversity.
Exactly. All right. And anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you got coming up and going down? And make sure everybody checks out DerrickRiches.com so you can check out his main website. But you also have a Facebook group as well. And you got some YouTube videos up. So
a few.
How you been doing with that?
I'm still really testing the waters with it. I'm just playing around with it at this point.
All righty, sir. I appreciate you being on, and make sure you check out DerrickRiches.com, and you can find out all that he's doing. There's a lot of smoker and grill reviews on there, all kinds of different articles and news, and check it out. And thanks again, Derrick, for being on. Hopefully I'll have you on again in the future, and we'll talk more barbecue stuff.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. Well, thanks again for following the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Make sure you check out Derrick Riches at DerrickRiches.com. He's got a ton of barbecue and grilling information on his website, and links to all his other platforms that he's on, Facebook, YouTube, and all that. Make sure you follow the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Make sure you follow Fire and Water Cooking on Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. And I'll see you again on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Thanks, guys.